Hello, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Emily from NISTS, and if this happens to be your first time on one of our calls, welcome. We're super glad you can join us. We're a professional development organization that specializes in bringing people together to talk about transfer student success. We believe transfer is everyone's responsibility, so no matter your functional area, institution, or organization type or size, we're happy to have you with us. If you'll indulge me for one quick moment while people stream in from the waiting room, I want to give a special shout out to my friends up in Ohio. I had the opportunity to hang out with the Ohio Transfer Council at their annual event last week, and they are doing some truly incredible work. In fact, if their efforts are any indication, then I know there's some fantastic stuff happening all across the country. There are so many of us who are dedicated to helping transfer students reach their academic goals, and I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say we're very eager to hear from the panelists we have on today's call. This is part 2 of our 3-part series with the Aspen Institute College Excellence Program and the Community College Research Center. We're here to explore strategy 2 of their recently revised Transfer Playbook. We did a call last week for strategy 1, and there will be another call later this week on Wednesday for strategy 3. Everyone's looking for practical solutions to common transfer challenges, so we're thrilled to have some of the folks who are featured in the playbook here with us today. They're going to talk about what they're doing and why, and hopefully share some behind-the-scenes insights that might not have made it into the playbook to make their work really come alive. Okay, with all that said, let's get started. I'm ready to dig into this just as much as you are. So I'm going to turn it over to today's moderator, Dr. Tanya LaViolet. Thanks again for being here. And on behalf of all of us at NISTS, Janet, Judith, me, and Joe, welcome. And we hope you enjoy the session. Tanya, take it away.
Thanks so much, Emily, and thank you so much to NISTS for hosting us today and for all the other webinars. If you weren't with us for the last two and you're new here, we have some background information for you on the research that CCRC and Aspen released over the last year. I'm really excited to be joined by our 3 esteemed panelists who are really going to make the 64-page transfer playbook come to life and take you behind the scenes. Today's focus for this webinar is clear pathways, tailored plans. And what we mean by that, like clear pathways and tailored plans and putting them together, is that it's great to have a pathway carved out for students that is essential for transfer student success, but students' lives aren't a straight line or a straight path. And so developing those tailored plans is really critical to making sure that they can translate those clear pathways into what is realistic and can help them set themselves for success in their own lives, in their day-to-day. So before we dive in with our panelists, I want to, if we could move to the next slide, just give a little bit of data background about why this is so important. So many of you have seen this before, but again, for those of you who are new here, we know that the broken transfer pathway negatively impacts millions of students. On the next slide, there's this gulf between student aspirations. Nationally, surveys show year after year that about 80% of entering community college students indicate an interest in a bachelor's degree. When we look 6 years out from entry, only 16% get a bachelor's degree. And then the research that CCRC and Aspen released last February, on the next slide, demonstrates that not only are these outcomes too low overall, but when we look a little bit deeper, there are also high disparities for specific student groups. In particular, here you can see the disparities for Black, Hispanic, Native American, low income, and adult students. And that is all across the transfer pipeline, from the transfer out rate to the bachelor's completion rate. And that last set of bars there is a combination of the two, both the transfer out rate and the bachelor's completion rate for that 16% overall rate. And you can see the disparities: 9% for Black students, 11% for low-income students, and 6% for adult students. Now, that's some sobering news, but the good news on the next slide is that that data is not destiny. What we see across the country is that, and across different states as well, is each of these institutions is a community college that typically in partnership with a four-year institution, if they are above that red dot, are doing better than the median. So this is what we did to conduct our transfer playbook research is we looked at the schools that were in partnership and individually achieving beyond the average transfer success rates. And then we interviewed them. We did some qualitative research to figure out what they're doing. So on the next slide, we go into a little bit more detail about the transfer playbook methodology. I won't spend too much time there. You can look at it in the recording, but I do want to say thank you to the team of researchers who are captured here on the right-hand side of the slide. This research was, it was a full year of doing the data analysis, conducting the qualitative interviews, doing the site visits, and then writing the playbook. And while it was incredibly hard work, it was incredibly rewarding and joyous work, as you can see here from the photos of the team. So thank you to them. This would not be possible without them. So if we move on to the next slide, this is what the transfer playbook looks like. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend going to the Aspen or CCRC websites, and maybe Nicole, if you could put that in the chat, we can make that available to you. There are three strategies that we call out in the playbook. Prioritizing transfer at the executive level to achieve sustainable success at scale, aligning program pathways and high quality instruction to promote timely bachelor's completion within a major, and let me underscore that point, within a major. And the third is tailored transfer advising and non-academic supports to foster trust and engagement. And in this webinar, we're really going to be looking at the intersection between the program pathways and the advising, again, those clear pathways in development of tailored plans. So let's dive into strategy 2. And the playbook is open access, so we're just going to put the link in the chat and you should be able to access it. Let's dive into strategy 2, aligning program pathways and high quality instruction to promote timely bachelor's completion within a major. For every single strategy in the playbook, there are 3 essential practices. The first essential practice in this strategy is 4-year sequences that promote learning and major progression. And what we mean by that is creating and maintaining clear term by term 4-year maps within a major that set the expectation for timely completion and that are adjustable for part-time students, as you'll see when we get to the point about developing tailored plans. Now, I will say that the use of the term 4-year map is a bit controversial. We know that so many students, the majority of students in community college are attending part-time. So why would we say something like a 4-year map? Well, we tried a 60 plus 60 map, but then you're excluding the quarter system schools. We did a 2 plus 2 map. Again, it's the same as a 4-year map. But when it came down to it, what we were trying to convey with a 4-year map is that the credits that students should be taking should take no more in the equivalent of full-time than 4 years. And if you construct a map in that way, then you can tailor it to students' needs by developing that tailored plan. But the 4-year map sets some very clear constraints for those who are developing the pathways for efficiency in terms of the pathway itself. So that's why we adopted that language with the asterisks, knowing that very few students are going to be able to complete that map within 4 years. So that we provide some very concrete guidance for what goes into a 4-year map, front-loading courses that inspire major exploration, commitment, or changes. So if you're a biology major, making sure you get a biology class in that first term, expecting at least one major specific course in each term of community college, again, so that once you get to the 4-year institution after completing your associate degree, that you would be major ready and on the same junior standing as someone who would have started at the major at the 4-year institution. And then finally, embedding college level and program specific math and English in the first year. And Wynn Ferdinand from John Jay is going to be talking about their curricular maps at John Jay for their Justice Academy. If we move on to the next slide, Essential practice 2 is systematized translation of maps into tailored plans. And we have our friends from Imperial Valley and San Diego State University who are going to be talking a little bit more about that, what that looks like in community college and the four-year institution. And what does this mean? Setting systems to ensure that students are developing those plans within the first term, ideally, and at the very latest, the first year. Creating customized plans that support timely completion while balancing students' outside responsibilities. Embedding maps and plans into student information and degree audit systems, again, so that some of this can be automated and to support advisors in their work. Adjusting course schedules and modalities to enable plan completion. So if we set a plan, we've got to make it easy for students to complete the plan. And then finally, the third essential practice in this section, which we're not going to get to today, is strengthened instruction, academic support, and curricular alignment. So when it came down to it, really creating spaces and routines for faculty to build those cross-sector relationships, to develop and maintain those pathways, including content on transfer student needs in faculty professional development, and then providing support in gateway courses to enable success. We know that those gateway courses are a real stumbling block for many community college transfer students or students who aspire to transfer. So again, we're not going to go as deeply on this third essential practice. We will touch on it through the panelists here today. But speaking of, let me turn it over now to our presenters. So each of them are going to take you behind the scenes of their campus and their practice in this domain. And then we're going to open it up to the audience for some questions to make sure that you get what you need out of this webinar. So welcome Stefan Hyman from San Diego State University, Alexis Villa from Imperial Valley College, and Wynn Ferdinand from John Jay College in the CUNY system. So I'm going to turn it over to Wynn to kick us off, and then we're going to go to Alexis and then Stefan. So Wynn, thank you so much for joining us. You're going to kick the presentations off.
Great, and thanks for the invite to share John Jay's work. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the context we're working in. We serve about 13,000 students. About 50% of those students are transfer students, many of them from within the CUNY system, which is City University New York system, comprised about 250,000 students. For about 14 years, John Jay has been developing and sustaining the CUNY Justice Academy. The Justice Academy is a partnership between John Jay and the 7 CUNY community colleges. And really our goal is to sustain partnerships with those colleges so that we can support transition from associate to baccalaureate degree and into grad school or the workplace. So by doing that, we're increasing student social mobility and more equitable outcomes for CUNY students. We focus on our work on sort of 3 areas: curriculum alignment, collaborative data and assessment of our project that's in collaboration with these colleges, and supporting effective transitions. And I know many of you have worked to develop articulations or other kinds of degree program partnerships with colleges in your regions or sometimes even nationally. Bringing those articulation agreements to life begins with creating 4-year degree maps. So this becomes a tool that all the stakeholders involved in supporting transfer and for students realizing their baccalaureate degree, sort of the stepping stone for that work. So our approach is to start with that articulation agreement as sort of a contract for the way that the relationship between an associate degree program and a bachelor's degree program at John Jay might work. At this point, we have agreements for about 9 majors that students can transfer to John Jay from the 7 community colleges. So you can imagine there's a fair amount of work that goes into creating these maps. First thing that is important to me about these degree maps is that students can access them at their campus and at John Jay's campus. So the digital information that's available to a student in a Justice Academy major is sort of accessible across the system. so that even in your first year of community college, you have information about what steps you might take to move to the four-year degree. Second thing that's really important about these maps, or the work they help us do, is to deepen the advisor's knowledge base around degree programs that feed into John Jay and the requirements students need to complete when they arrive here. Academic advisors are the backbone of the student experience, particularly for students entering John Jay as juniors, where there's so much information to sort through, and they're often the first point of contact that students see. And I think you'll hear more about how advisors work with students with my colleagues from SDSU. And finally, the process of creating these maps is usually one of the primary areas where we can develop and then sustain partnerships between faculty across institutions. As you know, in negotiating an articulation agreement, there's a fair amount of work that goes into understanding the curriculum of the partner institution and your own institution. And so once those sort of equivalencies or transfer in rules are established, returning to the degree programs and thinking through what the timeline and map for completion might look like is another way for faculty to think about how their programs are scaffolded and the relationship between courses. So involving faculty in vetting and reviewing the degree maps as a group has helped us to develop new partnerships around the curriculum so we can make improvements between programs to support transfer of skills and knowledge between schools. Can we go to the next slide, please? I talked about deepening the advisor's knowledge base. The other benefits to students are that they have a lot more information about the choices they're making in terms of which courses they should be taking sooner or later in their degree program. They also get access to information about what's offered at both institutions and what's specific to either a community college or John Jay. We have to do a significant amount of work to figure out what's the best way to scaffold development, both of concept knowledge in a major or degree program and in the general education curriculum. I'm sure many of you have gateway courses in your gen ed that feed into your majors. So figuring out where to place those in the map is an important question to approach. And then the examples that are in the playbook have some intentional flexibility built into them so that students have choices to make along the way in terms of the elective credits they can earn at either of our institutions and the way that they sequence some of their lower level requirements to prepare for transition. And last slide, please. One of the challenges of the work, I would say, is sustaining the accuracy of the information over time. Some of our partnerships are now 14 years old. That means that we've made changes, I would say, 2 or 3 times to those maps to reflect changes in the curriculum, to reflect changes in the needs and interests of students, and to respond to what we observe in students' performance, ability to successfully complete courses, and learning experiences in the programs that we serve. So as an example, one of our gateway courses, one of our junior level courses in our criminal justice degree is a research methods and stats course. We had students taking that in their first semester of junior year. We discovered that that was a really difficult course for students to transition into straight from community college. And so we worked with our partners to understand some of the writing and research skills students develop as they close out their community college program, and designed a writing in the disciplines course for criminal justice that students take as a intro course before they get to research methods. So work to keep the degree map alive is really important to make it meaningful for students as they transition each semester. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lynn. And as a reminder to everyone, please use the Q&A function It's just in the toolbar down below. It might be under the three little dots that says more, or right beside it, like it is for me. We're eager to get to your questions in the open question format. But now I'm going to turn it over to Alexis to go over Imperial Valley's individual education plans. Alexis.
Right. Hello, everyone. I was going to say good morning, but I know we're all on different time zones. So really excited to share with all of you today Imperial Valley College as a transfer-centered institution. And that is really a part of a rebrand that we're currently under. And so next slide, please. All right, so this is something that we drive across all of our campus community. So number one is that every student belongs, every student deserves access. And these two are now added in, which is transfer as a mindset and transfer as a culture. And those two are pieces that I have added in the latest professional development activities at the college. So next slide, please. So a little background, just in case y'all are wondering where we're located. We're in the southernmost part of Southern California. We are a border community college and with a very high unemployment rate, as you can see there. But these pieces are very intentional because that also feeds into having to transform our community to have this transfer mindset and transfer culture. Next slide, please. So access. As we all know, in our community, the bachelor attainment level is rather low compared to the state average. About 15% of adults in our community have a four-year degree, and this is the lowest in any county within Southern California and at the lowest levels in the state. We are a single community college district, and we happen to be a little geographically isolated with the nearest community college within the radius of 200 miles. We do have Palo Verde College, but that again, it's a little further out. 92% of our students are Hispanic Latinx students. 44% of all students are first generation. And I listed some of the barriers that some of the students at your institutions may also be facing. The pictures at the bottom show our enrollment status, so a little over 8,000 students. And it breaks down by first-time students and then returning students there as well, those percentages. And I also wanted to share with you to kind of give you a better picture of how many students are considered full-time, meaning they're enrolled in 12 or more units. And that's about a little over 40% of our students. Next slide, please. So Aspen did recognize us for our culture of care, and I wanted to make mention of the culture of care because this feeds into the culture of transfer as well. And this is a core piece of our outreach efforts out in the community, ensuring that the community views us as an option to, better their lives for economic mobility, for higher education. And as we build that in with our students to kind of get them in the door. And that's really kind of framing a lot of the conversation that takes on today. Next slide, please. Thank you. So some of our outcomes, and these are something that we stick to through our Vision 2030. And so we obviously want successful enrollment. We urge our students to complete the transfer level math and English within their first year. Persistence is metrics that we look closely at. Transfer as a center and obvious completion. Next slide. So one of the strategies that we use is student educational plans. And I know the name may vary by institution, but basically they're roadmaps, they're pathways. We have very targeted efforts within our counseling areas. So what these efforts mean, for example, if you see CSCP, it's an acronym for Counseling Student Educational Plan. But we do have campaigns year-round centered around CSCPs to ensure that we maximize the amount of students that have an updated roadmap to complete their education here at IVC. And so I capped data transparency, and that'll be in my next slide. I'll go into it a little more. But with the student educational plans, we acknowledged that there was a gap in how these were completed. Counselors completed different portions of it. They used different tools to complete these plans. And so we recognized that one of the challenges was training to streamline the way these student educational plans were documented and the information that was included. So we have embedded monthly trainings centered around CSEPs. And in our college, we do have monthly meeting with our counselors that are about 2 hours every month. 1 hour is for updates and the other hour is for trainings. And this year, we've centered a lot of those trainings on transfer and CSEPs. And it gives them the opportunity to share, ideas and share best practices. In addition, with the CSCP efforts on our campus to promote student educational plans as a roadmap, especially for our students, we created more signage on campus in the spaces where students will be, very active. So for example, in our library it has information on what a CSCP is, how to obtain a counseling ed plan. It'll have QR codes so that they can sign up and fill out their information so that we can contact them with the counseling appointment and so on and so forth. Our college center also has some of this signage. Some of our classrooms include the signage and so on. And this really transformed the amount of student demand for these appointments. So that's a really good best practice that I would definitely recommend. In addition, we partnered up with our public information officer's office and wanted to ensure that we have continuous messaging on social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook around counseling ed plans and making sure students know what an ed plan is and why it's so important. Because as we know, ed plan is that roadmap for students to complete on time, and it outlines all the courses that they will need. We also, emphasize with special programs and saying, hey, some of the services that y'all are providing could be tied to a counseling ed plan. How do we maximize some of the workshops and the ongoing activities that programs are doing? We want to ensure that all of your students have CSEPs. So for some of our special programs, the CSEP completion rate is way high. They have a 97%. Institutionally, we have about 86% of our students at any given time, and it varies semester to semester, but at any given time that have a updated plan. So that is our big push, and that is our big practice, because we acknowledge and we've seen data that the more students have an updated educational plan, the higher persistence and retention and the higher completion and transfer rates we'll have. It goes tandem with all of these transfer practices that we'll be sharing with you today. So for us, we have two types of ed plans. One is abbreviated, meaning it'll have kind of the first academic year. And we have been, my team's amazing. They have been working on ensuring that every high school senior in our county receives an abbreviated ed plan. That is one of the practices, or that is the practice that I will be highlighting most today as a best practice in our outreach going out to the community. And then I delineated the difference between abbreviated and comprehensive. Comprehensive is from start to finish, and it also outlines their academic goals. Next slide, please. I don't know if there's a delay on my end.
We can see the slide, Alexis, if you have a.
Yeah, it may just be on my end.
Yeah, it's the
Oh, there we go.
it's the
That.
graph bar charts. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I apologize. My internet's really slow, so that may be the reason why I kind of pause. I don't see the slide. All right, so this kind of shows we do have, when I mentioned earlier, data transparency. So we do have access to data dashboards through our institutional research office that tracks in much detail how we're doing with our ed plans. As you can see, the top charts at the top show spring and fall 2024 and spring 2025. And you can see the amount of CSEPs have increased with our counselors. The bottom table that you see there shows semester CSEP completion by counselor. So we track how many CSEPs each counselor provides by semester. The table that you see at the bottom wasn't always accessible to all counselors. It was only accessible to administrators like the dean of the area or the vice president. In my tenure as vice president, I'm close to 2 years in the role. I made that dashboard accessible for all counselors because I believe that data transparency should be a practice of the institution. And I was very clear that this wasn't a numbers game, that this wasn't a who can, develop the most CSCPs, because we want to ensure that the CSCPs are accurate and they're quality educational plans for the students. So we've done a lot of training around that. But since we kind of made the dashboards visible so they can, I didn't provide the names for the sake of this presentation, but they can literally see their names next to and track, how many CSCPs they're completing. And this shifted the culture from just giving, general course recommendations to actually developing plans with the students, which is really important. And again, these dashboards really help us to see like where we're at. And then from there, we also have other counselors looking at the ed plans to ensure that they're accurate. Next slide, please. And apologies if I pause a lot. There we go. So our next strategy, and I've been talking about it, is outreach. So I listed some of the outreach strategies that we're already implementing that we can take a whole nother webinar on, such as like dual enrollment, our cooperative articulation agreements, location sharing partnerships, university partnerships, our transfer workshops, lunch and learns, transfer events, and transfer trainings for counselors, because I'd be remiss, it's a lot of work, right, that goes into transfer. But again, for purposes of this webinar, we're highlighting that high school outreach piece, where we call matriculation and course services on our campus. So we outreached to over 2,400 seniors this past academic year. And that was with a team of 12 counselors. And we didn't include the specialists, but it was with a team of 12 counselors and 3 specialists, classified specialists. And all students, the goal was for all of them to receive an ed plan. Next slide, please. So this is the list of the different high schools, and this includes continuation high schools and adult high schools as well. So it's about 16 high schools in our community. We completed over 2,435 applications and 2,238 orientations. And then the abbreviated ed plans were about 2,086. And it could be that for whatever reason, the students were absent or the plan wasn't completed and it's still in progress. So we don't count it until it's finalized. And over summer, we take time to go back with the students. And those pictures there, you can see some of our teams at the high school. The picture with the laptops, you can see the high school setup vary by high school. Some high schools lend us their libraries. Some high schools lend us a classroom. So the setup is really tailored to the high school location. But that gives you a little preview. Next slide, please. So what is the timeline for this high school outreach? So October through December, our team goes out and focuses on having them complete an admission application to the college and orientation. We will hear it every single year. I'm going to IVC. I'm going to SDSU directly. I'm going to UCSD. I'm going to another university or another community college. And we say, that's great, and we support you in that, but we still encourage you to complete an application, just in case. And so that's like our motto when we go out to the high schools. March through May, that's where we focus on the student educational plan. So the same team returns in the spring, and that's where they have the one-on-one appointments with the students as they come in at the high schools. And May through August, so once the students graduate and have an abbreviated outcome, we start an outreach campaign for them to complete the comprehensive. This year, we started with our STEM students because we recognize some of the sequencing is a little bit more nuanced. So our transfer center right now is contacting STEM students that have just graduated so that they can complete the comprehensive ed plan over the summer. At the same time, our counselors that return to high schools are content students that come in for that comprehensive plan. And that may take us the next academic year, but as long as they have a comprehensive educational plan within their first year, that's really looking for. And that's where we tie in the transfer and have a more nuanced plan depending on what institution they want to transfer to. And so that August through May piece where it says outreach to students is for that purpose, to say, hey, you got an abbreviated ed plan at the high school. Is this still accurate? Next slide, please. So our logistics, how do we do this? We do have a liaison model at every high school. So we have someone at the high schools that is going to coordinate with someone at the college. So out of the 12 counselors, we do have different counselors assigned to different high schools that will work with the high school, either advisor or the high school representative, and they coordinate the schedules and they set up an annual calendar for each high school. So usually it'll take us 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the size of the high school. Some high schools may only have 250 seniors. Some years, Calexico, which is our biggest high school, one year had close to 700. So it just varies on the high school size and the time we spend out there. They coordinate what week they're going to go, depending on the time window. So if it's in the fall, it's for applications. And if it's in the spring, it's for the abbreviated ed plan. And so within that, we also develop a comprehensive schedule for the counselors that will be out at the high schools. Sometimes outside of our core, we may invite counselors from other special programs to do the outreach or the ed planning with us if we identify a big population of students that would fit into that program. So for example, for disabled students, programs and services, usually 1 or 2 counselors may accompany us to the high school to provide that additional outreach. And so again, for spring, you focus on abbreviated ed plans and you identify the transfer bound students. And again, fall is focusing on admission applications. Next slide, please. Again, so our transfer center, as I mentioned earlier, will outreach specifically to our STEM students during the summer first to complete that comprehensive ed plan and also to identify the institution that they're transferring to. In addition to that, we are actively outreach to the rest of the students as well to ensure that they complete that comprehensive planning. We are also encouraging every single staff member, whether they're front and center at the front desk, whether they're behind the scenes, to promote activities to our students. So our transfer center, again, continues to host a lot of center programming, as I've mentioned before, they're listed there. And our transfer center coordinator actively works with the articulation officers at the different universities to ensure that's up to date and that's continuous. We do have legislation in California now that kind of promotes transfer even more. That just went into effect in, I believe, August 2024. And that that legislation ensures that students are transfer bound and that we provide that programming. So transfer is a standing meeting item every month at our counselor meetings as well. So that's a continuous training. Next slide, please. Thank you.
No
So
problem.
again, as long as we're all, working together, we are also actively out partnering in the community to ensure that we're all on the same page. We partner very closely with San Diego State. San Diego State has their main campus in San Diego, but also the Imperial Valley campus that we work very, very closely with. And we do have someone from campus on site available every week. Their outreach team has also been coming out to our college center and our library to host kind of walk-in hours for our students. In addition, leadership at both our institution and SDSU meets at least monthly to discuss different topics. It could be anywhere from articulation to program mapping, curriculum, and so on and so forth. We have an active partnership as well for housing. We will be venturing that beginning in fall 2026 that we're really excited about. So these partnerships also are a big piece of a lot of the activities that I shared today. What are our next steps? So we want to connect a lot of the ongoing transfer activities now and the educational plan. Now our next steps is to include resumes, and we want our students to have an educational plan and a resume within their first year. And also embedding that career planning very intentionally. So as students are letting us know what their career goals are, we want to tie that into their ed plan and tie that into that resume that they're already building. So all of our services and events for next year, I've asked everyone to make sure that it has a transfer component, even our student health center. So our student health center, I've asked them to develop workshops centered on transfer. So for transfer bound students, so the anxiety it takes to fill out an application and go through that process, support for when family may not want them to transfer and what that could look like. So our health center is going to develop workshops for transfer bound students and to kind of invite students to kind of navigate some of these important topics, aside from the support that we're already providing through ed planning. And again, our hope is to continue to strengthen that transfer culture And I really want to, point out that the presentation I shared obviously is the work of the team here at IBC, that we continue to build that culture. And so hopefully I see some questions and I'm hoping to answer them at the end. But that concludes my portion of the presentation. So I turn it over to Stefan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexis, and thank you to NISTS and also Aspen for hosting us today and also recognizing us. Really quickly, SDSU is a large public university in California. Again, as Alexis mentioned, our main campus is right in the heart of San Diego. We also have another campus, which I'll get to in just a moment, in Calexico, California. We have just under 40,000 students who are enrolled, and that is not counting our virtual students, where we can add on another 3,300 students. We also have another campus in Tbilisi, Georgia, as well. So we are a global university. We're part of the California State University system, top 3% in some of the more recent rankings by the Global 200, by the Center for World University Rankings. We also just became an R1 university this past February. We have over 500,000 living alumni across the world, and we offer more than 200 degree programs, including about 100 undergraduate majors. Next slide, please. Okay, so specifically SDSU Imperial Valley, that is our satellite campus located 2 hours east of San Diego in Calexico. The campus is actually located just 4 blocks north of the US-Mexican border. You can actually walk right across the border and go have lunch over in Mexicali. Delicious Chinese food. We're the only four-year university in Imperial County. I'll show you that on a map in just a moment, but that really increases, I think, the vitalness of our campus working collaboratively with Imperial Valley College as a primary community college within the county. San Diego State Imperial Valley had a record enrollment this year of 1,232 students, which we're incredibly proud of, and working towards actually increasing that enrollment up to 2,000 students in the coming years. Historically, the programs that the campus has offered have been geared towards meeting regional workforce demand. We've offered programs specifically in education, criminal justice, homeland security, and also various forms of social services. And we've been adding new programs in chemistry, engineering, nursing, and public health in alignment with some of the emerging industries. And one of the biggest sector that's actually moving into Imperial County is actually what we call in California, Lithium Valley. So that is a lithium mining under the Salton Sea project, which is bringing in some very large companies and creating a lot of new jobs that require students to be graduating with 4-year degrees in STEM fields. Next slide, please. Over the last 5 years or so, SDSU across both of its campuses has enrolled more than 27,000 new transfer students. And the majority of those transfers are coming to us from 9 local community colleges, which you can see on a map down at the bottom of this slide. 8 of those community colleges are in San Diego County, just 1 in all of Imperial County, again, expressing the how vital that partnership actually is. And roughly 70% again of our transfers are coming from these local community colleges, which we've deemed in California Region 10. With such, I think, a mutual dependency on this network here, trust and collaboration are really, really vital. And that's taken years, I think, to develop in terms of just understanding that everyone on both sides, the community college side, the 4-year campus side, are working with the best interests of students in mind. It's also required very frank and open conversations. Alexis mentioned some of the collaborations that happen with monthly meetings with transfer articulation officers, for example. I also meet every month with the community college presidents from all 9 of these campuses. And I think that's kind of important to set a tone for everyone at all of our staffs, that this is a priority for us, that transfers are not a second thought. We are not working to kind of fill in empty spaces that are left by first-year students who depart universities. This is really more about trying to make sure that we have really a transfer-first mentality here, and are thinking about transfers right from the very start when it comes to curriculum development, when it comes to pathways, and trying to improve what has been a struggle nationally for many, many decades. Next slide, please. So Quickly, a couple of the resources and a couple of the programs that we are running right now. At many of our community colleges, we're actually hosting admitted student receptions in April and in May. That is both to congratulate the students who are going to be entering SDSU in the coming year. It's also to set a tone and to start setting some expectations for those students who are looking for a four-year education, making them see actually that this is very, very achievable for them. We host dedicated transfer orientations, and this is something that was specifically called out by Aspen and Columbia in their recent report. About 95% of our transfer students attend orientations. This is not required, but it is something that is very, very encouraged, very much encouraged, and something we're very successful getting students to enroll at. And the reason for this being not just that they're choosing classes at orientation, but it's a great way for them to meet other transfer students. It is also where they're learning quite a bit about their degree evaluation, how their transfers credits are ultimately coming in, and how we can ultimately try to get them through a four-year degree on their timeline. The majority of our students enroll as full-time students, but we've also worked on a variety of different pathways for those who are starting off part-time to get to make sure that they can balance their work, family, and other obligations while continuing their education. Something we rolled out in the last 2 years has been a Transfer Success one credit seminar. We have several hundred students who are enrolling in that every year now, because I think we kind of all know this, that there are many transfer students who think that because they have started at a community college or somewhere in higher education, everything that they know is easily transferable into a new institution, and that is not necessarily, in fact, usually not the case. There's a lot to actually learn and understand about the new environment that they're going to be in. Another way that we try to get transfer students connected is with our Transfer Student Alliance student organization. We've also placed student success centers in each college, which have trained personnel on transfer credit questions in particular. And we're hosting programs during National Transfer Student Week, not just for transfer students, but for the campus community at large. And this is, again, another way that we're trying to normalize, socialize just how vital transfer pathways are to our infrastructure at SDSU. So something we're planning on doing for the coming fall Transfer Student Week is actually highlighting some of our transfer articulation faculty rock stars, so that others can really see how appreciated their work is. And again, we can get more faculty to kind of partner with us on future initiatives. Next slide, please. Okay, and the last slide that I'll just share here. We're incredibly proud of what we've been able to accomplish. Most recently, our most recent class of transfer students, 63% graduated in just 2 years. Going back 1 year, 84% graduated in 3 years or less. Going one more year out, 85% graduated in 4 years or less. I'm actually expecting that number to actually bounce back up to about 88, 89% when we come to get to this coming year. You can see that fall 2020 class obviously impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm happy to now turn this back over to our hosts, and thank you very much again for having us.
Thank you so much, Stefan, Alexis, and Wynn. Okay, so we've got about 9 minutes left. So a few things. I'm going to go to the Q&A to see if there's some questions that we haven't answered there. And then it's turning to the audience. So feel free to raise your hand or unmute yourself. But I'm going to first, Stefan, while we have you teed up, there's a couple questions in the Q&A. Is the transfer seminar taken during their time at community college or university? And then the modality of your orientations to get that 95% participation rate.
Yeah, so right now the class is taken on the San Diego campus, although we've had 2 virtual sessions that have been offered in the most recent year for those who are looking for more virtual instruction overall. We have kind of broached the idea with a couple of our community college partners about possibly teaching the seminar on site at the community college. So it's something that we're in discussions about maybe for future years. In terms of modality for orientation, right now that's 100% in person. During COVID, of course, we were 100% virtual. We had a hybrid format, and we've kind of at this point come back to in person. And students they're making the trip for those outside of the area, but again, about 70% are coming from San Diego or Imperial counties. So they are very energized about coming in person.
Thank you so much. All right, I think we have cleared all the questions in the Q&A format. So now to the attendees, this is your space, your webinar. What questions do you have for our esteemed panelists? Erica Johnson, go ahead.
Hi, another question for Stefan. So I assume that as a large university, you are divided into schools and colleges. Does your transfer seminar, is it only within your liberal arts college, or can students across all your academic programs take the class, and do they all give credit for it? And then if that's the case, I'm also wondering if you're willing to share that curriculum.
Yes and yes. Yes. First, any transfer student is eligible to enroll in that class. It's a one-unit seminar, counts for elective credit. Um, in terms, we are divided into colleges. Our orientations generally try to bring in students on dates specifically for those colleges and for some of our larger majors like biology, psychology, computer science, business, specific dates that those majors are represented. And happy to follow up with you if maybe you could put your email in the chat on curriculum.
Any other questions that you have? You have the experts at your disposal. Any burning questions or a challenge that you're facing you want the experts to consult on? And I know, Wynn, there were a lot of questions for you in the chat. Is there anything else that you wanted to add that kind of get at all of the activity there? Things that you didn't get to share in your presentation?
I don't think there's too much. I think Dr. Logue put a comment in there about emphasizing the value that all the partners bring to the Justice Academy partnership. I think everybody who spoke today has emphasized the value of that partnership and sort of understanding and meeting people where they are in terms of their motivations for supporting transfer, and the context in which they're doing that work is just as important as writing good transfer credit rules and drafting articulations, right? So if there's anything that makes this happen, it's the partnership between the individuals.
Okay, well, I'm going to take this time to thank our panelists. What struck me, well, I was already familiar with the great work that you do. What strikes me is that this conversation about partnership and context, the three of you could not be from any more different contexts. And it just goes to show that transfer excellence, transfer student success can happen anywhere if you put the if the right conditions are there and you put the elbow grease in like you all are doing. Thank you for your leadership in this space. Thank you for everyone for attending this session. And if you have any additional questions, Emily, maybe you can direct them to us. We'll see you at the next one.
Yep, thanks so much for being here, everyone. And just as a quick reminder, we are recording the webinar and we'll send it out as a package of 3 a little bit later this week. So please stay tuned with that and feel free to share it with all of your friends and colleagues because they'll want access to this information too. So thank you, and we'll see you on Wednesday for the next one. Bye-bye, everyone.